Alright, y'all, it's me coming back at you again with another vid. You know what? I decided to do this video because I really would like to get some of your thoughts and opinions about this. Alright, it's fine that you can leave it in the comment section below in the video. If you want to go ahead and do the video response, I'm cool with that. Now, the question that I'm going to ask you is going to be the title of this video is, what should Anthony Joshua do now? What should his next move be? All right. The reason why I'm asking this question, because now that the WBA has came out and ordered the fight between him and Luis Ortiz to take place next, and they have 30 days to negotiate a deal before it goes to a purse bid. And if he decides, although we were led to believe that his next shot is against Kubrat Pulev, which could turn out to be untrue here, because the fact that Jay Jimenez had came out and said that, wait a minute, both of the sanctioned parties already agreed prior that the WBA mandatory comes before the IBF. And Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua has already stated that their next fight will be against Kubrat Pulev, and they're already working out the particulars to get a date for the fight. And the city and venue is going to be in Cardiff in the UK. So the first argument I've heard about this is that you don't need a belt to make great fights. Well, I do agree with that to some degree, but however, only certain exceptions can be made, and that exception can be made is that if you're already established great fighter. And let me give you some examples. Let's take Lennox Lewis. Okay, now Lennox Lewis, when he beat Evander Holyfield to capture the WBA, the IBF, and the vacant IBO less regarded title, all right, for the undisputed heavyweight championship back in 1999, November of that year, he was ordered to fight the WBA mandatory challenger, which is John Ruiz. Okay, now before that fight, the WBA was pressuring Lennox to make the defense. They pressured Lennox to make the defense, right? Well, actually, no, not just Lennox or Evander. Okay, whoever the winner of the fight between Evander Holyfield and Lennox Lewis, they were both pressured to make that defense afterwards, and they both agreed whoever the winner of that fight will have to face John Ruiz afterwards, right? So, but nonetheless, during that particular time and situation, an up-and-coming heavyweight who was dangerous at that time, which we all know is no longer who no longer is a promising fighter, which is Michael Grant. Michael Grant was raising up into the ranks of the heavyweight division. He was the coming guy. He was he had a lot of promise in him, and there was a lot of stock invested to Michael Grant. Michael Grant was the fight that everyone wanted to see as a public demand, whoever the winner between Luis Ortiz and Evander Holyfield and Lennox Lewis was. Okay, now Lennox ended up beating Evander Holyfield, right? So Lennox, on the other hand, was in a tough situation. Okay, I think his team claimed that they were promised that they could keep the WBA title. Well, actually, you know what? The WBA, after the fight, Lennox and his team wanted the Michael Grant fight, okay? The WBA said, okay, we'll grant you the fight. You can go ahead and defend your title against Michael Grant, but you have to guarantee us that if you win that fight, you will have to give John Ruiz a shot right afterwards. And Lennox agreed. But no. Guess what happened? Don King intervened. He said that there was a clause in the contracts between Lennox Lewis and Evander Holyfield that the winner of that fight would have to face John Ruiz right after that. And Don King sued Lennox Lewis, took him to court, and well, he tried to take him to court, but Lennox Lewis was like having that. He's like, you know what, forget that. I'd rather not go through that litigation process. Nobody wants to see me fight Ruiz anyway, so I'm going to go after the dangerous fight, which is Michael Grant. So Lennox ended up vacating his title. But my point is this. At that time, Lennox Lewis was already an established fighter, okay? This is a guy who had very successful title defenses. He beat the likes of Tony Tucker. He beat Frank Bruno. He beat Tommy Morrison, Ray Mercer, Oliver McCall, Shannon Briggs, and Evander Holyfield leading up to that point, all right? Now, from that point, Lennox beat 1 Hall of Famer, 2 lineal champions, and 6 world champions at that point. he was already a great fighter after that. And between him and Evander Holyfield, they had cleaned out the heavyweight division. All right, those are the only two guys left standing who to determine the number one heavyweight supremacy at that time. Okay, so Lennox Lewis was an exception. Well, he's more an example of a great fighter without having to win a belt at that time. All right. Now, of course, for him to be a great fighter, he had to become a champion and make a lot of successful title defenses against dangerous opposition like he did before the Evander Holyfield fight. All right. Another example is Larry Holmes. Now, we all know about Larry Holmes' historic career as a heavyweight. His early runs in the late 70s, okay? Or late 70s and the mid 80s. Larry Holmes had 18 successful title defenses as the reigning lineal WBC heavyweight champion, all right? He beat a lot of dangerous opposition at the time that were available. He cleaned out his division, okay? Now, after he beat Carl Williams, well, actually, no. I think after he beat Marvis Frazier, who's the son of Joe Frazier at the time, which proved to be his last fight as a pro, Marvis Frazier, that is. After he knocked out Marvis Frazier, which is a total mismatch, whoa, brutal knockout. Actually, Mike Tyson and Marvis Frazier was worse than Larry Holmes. Now, he was mandated by the WBC to fight Greg Page, okay? Now, according to my understanding, Larry Holmes did not want to take that fight because he was going to get paid less than when he was compensated for the Marvis Frazier fight, okay? I think he was paid in the neighborhood of $3.2 million for the Marvis Frazier fight, and he was asked to take a pay cut, which is $2.2 million or $2.5 to fight Greg Page. Greg Page was the mandatory challenger. Larry Holmes is like, forget that. I'm not taking that fight. He demanded $5 million to take the fight. It was not granted to him, so he vacated the WBC belt and instead he was awarded the newly created IBF belt. But Larry Holmes still managed to hold on to his lineal in-ring magazine titles at that time, okay? So Larry Holmes is another example of a fighter who's already great, who already proved himself against dangerous opposition, who had multiple successful title defenses after title defenses to prove that he was a great fighter, to prove that he didn't need the belt, to prove that he was already great. Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder is nowhere near the level of Lennox Lewis, or the stage, I should say, of Lennox Lewis and Larry Holmes, when they were put in a situation where they either had to take on a certain fight or go after other greater challenges if it means vacating the belt. Okay, they're not in that position to do that right now. Okay, I know this other argument came up saying, well, they could Deontay Wilder can vacate the belt against, like, for example, Bernays Sava's situation if he wants to make a great fight happen, like Luis Ortiz. Okay, fair enough, he can win it later. But can you also say the same thing for Anthony Joshua, because he's also put in this situation as well? Okay, now, can you honestly tell me that you'd rather have Anthony Joshua vacate his belt to avoid a fight with Luis Ortiz to pursue a fight with Kubrat Pulev while he's still a champion for the IBF? Is a Kubrat Pulev fight versus is that really a greater fight than Luis Ortiz? Let's be honest here, because if you're going to say it is, then you're not being honest. I have to be blunt. I have to be a blunt, okay? Because if Anthony Joshua vacates that title, if this is true, that him and Eddie Hearn knew that they had to have that WBA mandatory before the IBF mandatory, and they decided to forego that to take on an opponent that seems more winnable than a dangerous opponent like Luis Ortiz, that is a blatant duck. And Anthony Joshua is going to get ridiculed for that. I'm sorry. It's an honest fact, okay? That's an honest fact. You cannot say that a Kubrat Pulev fight is much more greater fight than fighting Luis Ortiz. And the reason why Eddie Hearn is trying to go that direction, and this is my opinion, and this could be true, because he doesn't believe that Anthony Joshua could beat Luis Ortiz at this point. That's the reason why they're going the other direction, if this story is true, that Jay Jimenez had came out and said, and that WBA has not ordered the fight. Moments later, after Jay Jimenez had came out and said that, hey, they already knew that our mandatory it comes before the IBF. So why are they trying to go after the IBF rather than us? So, yeah. Okay, you guys can tell that the tone of my voice, I'm very frustrated about this. Now, you already heard my opinion. You already heard what I think Anthony Joshua should do. Now, I'll say this again if you didn't catch it in my last video. I think Anthony Joshua, if the WBA has to come before the mandatory comes before the IBF, what Anthony Joshua should do is get a unification bout if he wants to keep his title. Okay? Now, we all know that unification supersedes mandatory. Now, whoever the winner of the Deontay Wilder Anthony Joshua fight, I think that's the fight he should go for, if that's possible. If the winner of that fight should now go ahead and take on the mandatory of Luis Ortiz and Kubrat Pulev. That's just my thoughts on it. Okay? But in all fairness, Anthony Joshua, I really part of me really feel bad for the guy that he's put in this situation. But hey, this is boxing. And when you're a champion, when you're a cash cow, and you're put in a situation like this is somewhat inevitable. You know, even though we may not like it, but you got to deal with it one way or the other. Man. But, just, to be honest, Anthony Joshua was in a much more tougher situation than Deontay Wilder. Now that the WBA came out and pulled this. All right? So, another thing I'm hearing is that, well, again, going back to this point that a belt doesn't make a fighter great. Well, again, you don't need a belt to make great fights. Well, again, I know I had this conversation on the EJ's Boxing Live and Hangout, with all the guys, the Blood Boxing, Boxing Beats and Rhymes, Chris Caban, B. Marsh, Mr. Doc, Low Place, who else is on there? Bo, Truth and Boxing Facts. Shout out to all the brothers who are on there, man. And the thing is that when you say that, I think that kind of discourages up-and-coming fighters. And the reason why I say that is that when you ask an up-and-coming fighter, what is their number one goal in this sport? It's not just only to make money. They all know it's prize fighting. It's a rewarding business to make money. But their ultimate goal is to win a title. You know why? Because when you win a title, that's a reward that tells that the fighter has actually accomplished something as a champion, okay? When they win a title, that means they're top of the division, okay? When they make numerous of title defenses against the best of their division or dangerous opponents, they get rewarded down the line. When they do that, they have established themselves as top-grade, well-seasoned professional fighters. So, Dillian White and Luis Ortiz would disagree with that notion that belts don't mean nothing to them, because both of those guys have made it perfectly clear that going forward, if they have to get into a big fight, they're not going to take that fight unless there's a title on the line. Plain and simple, because they've all fought their ways to get to get themselves a shot at the title, and that's what they want. So you can't tell them that belts don't mean nothing, because that's what they want. They want their title shot, so they want a title to prove the fact that they could be a champion, and they could be great champions by making successful title defenses. So anyways, that's my take on it. Let me know what your thoughts about this. So again, I'll go ahead and propose the question again. What should Anthony Joshua do? Should he go ahead, if the WBA mandatory has to come before the IBF, which more likely is the case based off the current reports, should he go ahead and get Luis Ortiz out the way, or should he get the WBA to somehow get an exemption to take on take on another champion like Deontay Wilder? Joseph Parker's already booked, so you can forget about him. So should he go ahead and get an exemption and get a unification bout with Deontay Wilder, since unification bout supersedes mandatories? Or should he just go ahead and vacate his belt, vacate the WBA belt, to go ahead and fight Kubrat Pulev instead to defend the IBF belt? Let me know your thoughts about this one. I'm out.